3 hours, and it's all ours, Daniel whispered, his voice low but sharp, carrying through the half-open hospital door. I froze. My eyes were shut, but every nerve in my body was awake, my breath shallow under the thin blanket. "Did you bring the papers?" he pressed. "Yes." Emily's reply was steady, almost too calm. "The signature looks real. Once she doesn't wake up, we'll file it. No one will question it." The word sliced through me harder than any scalpel could. My chest thudded, not from the failing heart that had brought me here, but from the unbearable truth settling in. My daughter, my son-in-law, plotting against me as I lay there waiting for surgery. The gurney beneath me felt like ice. Just minutes earlier, Emily had held my hand, her smile radiant in that red dress she loved, promising everything would be fine. Daniel had stood beside her, shoulders squared in his perfect gray suit, telling me I was stronger than anyone he knew. For years I had believed him. Every Sunday dinner, every late-night phone call about business, every kind gesture, I thought it was loyalty. I thought it was love. I had built everything for her. At 72, after Robert died, I took grief and turned it into grit. Block by block, property by property, I built an empire worth millions. Apartments in the city, houses near the shore, land that grew in value with every passing year. All of it was meant for Emily, for her children, for their safety when I was gone. Now, as the antiseptic stung my nose and the monitor beeped steadily at my side, I realized the empire had become my curse. They thought I was sleeping. They thought the old woman had no fight left. But they didn't know me, not really. I had survived the loss of a husband, the brutality of business deals, the loneliness of empty nights. I wasn't about to let betrayal be the last chapter of my life. I opened my eyes, stared at the painting of a mountain on the wall, and felt something shift inside me. The fear of surgery was gone, replaced by something sharper. I wasn't going under that knife without a plan. If Daniel and Emily wanted a war over my legacy, they were about to learn exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate Catherine Sterling. "The doctors already said her chances aren't great," Daniel muttered, his voice slicing through the hallway like a blade. "At her age, with that weak heart, complications are almost guaranteed." I went rigid under the blanket. Complications, a fake will, a vegetative state. My mind struggled to grasp it, my own child, the people I had loved more than life itself, whispering about my death as though they were negotiating a deal. "Good," Daniel went on, and I could practically hear the grin in his voice. "The notary's ready. The moment we get the death certificate, or if she ends up declared incompetent, we'll transfer everything. The downtown buildings alone are worth over $1 million. Add the land and the house, and that's nearly $2 million in our hands." Emily's laugh followed, brittle and cold. "No one will ever suspect us. It'll look natural. Just a routine complication from surgery, or worst case, she ends up in a coma. Either way, her assets are ours. Power of attorney will cover everything." My stomach twisted. My daughter, my only child, speaking of me as though I were a piece of property, a locked safe to be cracked open. The white walls around me blurred, the spinning in my head so violent I thought I might faint. My lips pressed together until I tasted blood, fighting the scream clawing its way up my throat. How could it be real? Emily, the baby I had carried, the little girl I had sung to sleep, the woman I had supported through every heartbreak, was standing outside my door, plotting my death. And Daniel, the son I thought I had gained, reducing me to numbers on a balance sheet. My hands trembled under the thin blanket. Each word was another knife plunged into me. "What if she survives?" Emily finally asked, her voice trembling with doubt. "What if the surgery works and she walks out of here?" Daniel's reply was a laugh I will never forget. Dark, mocking, cruel. I already handled that. Mark's on the night shift. $5,000 was enough to buy his loyalty. One extra dose of morphine and she'll never wake up. Nothing anyone can trace. It'll look like the heart just gave out after surgery. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Mark. The nurse who had been so gentle, so kind, the one who always tucked the blanket around my shoulders like a caring son. He was part of this nightmare too. Perfect, Emily breathed, her relief audible. So no matter what, by tomorrow morning we'll be set. You and me, Daniel? Millionaires at last? Exactly, Daniel said, his voice swelling with pride. No more Sunday dinners listening to her drone on about the past. No more lectures on marriage or business advice we never asked for. We'll finally be free and rich. The words were hammers against my soul. All those years, I thought they cherished our family traditions, the stories I shared, the wisdom I offered. I thought I was giving them stability, warmth, guidance, but it had all been a mask. A carefully staged performance until the moment I became disposable. The only thing that bothers me, Emily added after a pause, is the kids. They'll wonder about their grandmother. What do we tell them? Daniel's answer was chilling in its simplicity. We'll say she was old, that her heart gave out. We'll dress it up with something sweet. Tell them she's in heaven watching over them. Kids forget fast. By the time they're grown, they'll barely remember her. All they'll know is she left them the wealth that made their lives comfortable. My throat burned with silent tears. My grandchildren, my angels, would be fed lies to erase me from their lives, turned into beneficiaries of blood money. Lying there, motionless, I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was the cruelest theft of all, not only my life, but the love I thought we shared. And as my chest heaved with quiet, controlled breaths, I swore to myself, if I survived that operating room, they would regret ever mistaking Catherine Sterling for a helpless old woman. With $2 million, we can disappear to Miami, Daniel said, voice low and greedy. New life, new schools for the kids, a beach house. No more of this old town. My breath hitched. 2 million, Miami. My grandchildren's faces popped into my mind, little mouths calling, Grandma Catherine. As they barreled into my arms every Sunday, their hair smelling of playgrounds and sunshine. 5 and 7 years old, bright and trusting. The thought of them growing up believing I'd simply passed away, never knowing their parents had plotted it, clawed at me. Emily laughed softly, the sound like ice. I've always wanted to live by the ocean, she said. We could travel, buy nice things, send the children to the best schools. It's everything I've dreamed of, everything built on a lie, everything bought with betrayal, every memory of baking cookies with flour on my apron, of reading them stories until their eyes drooped, of tucking them into bed. Were they to be erased and replaced by that tidy phrase, inheritance? The cruelty of it made bile rise in my throat. Daniel continued, his tone suddenly practical. We'll stage a decent funeral, enough to look heartfelt but not waste half the estate. A respectable casket, tasteful flowers, a short eulogy. People will weep. They always do. We'll cry at the right moments. Nobody will suspect a thing. Make sure we don't look too theatrical, Emily added. We need to seem devastated but not suspiciously so. And afterwards, wait to probate, let things cool. Don't rush the paperwork. Appear prudent. They spoke as if they were planning a business launch, not the end of my life. Their words dug into me. Rehearsed grief, staged sorrow, calculations about who would sing at my memorial and how much the burial plot would cost. I had spent decades teaching my daughter about integrity, about honoring commitments, about loving people, not possessions. Had all those lessons been a performance for them to exploit? And the children? Emily said finally, softer now, a flicker of something like guilt or calculation in her voice. What do we tell them? Daniel's reply was cold in its simplicity. We tell them Grandma was old. Her heart was frail. We say she went to heaven. Kids are resilient. They'll adapt. In a year or two, they'll be talking about their allowance and school plays instead of funerals. My hands tightened around the sheet until the pale fabric whisper crinkled. My grandchildren's little faces, how quickly would they forget me if their parents taught them to forget? Would they grow up loving the idea of a safe life, never knowing it was paid for with my silence? The image of them chasing each other in my garden, picking daisies, filled me with a sorrow so sharp it almost steadied me. You know, Daniel mused, we can afford to be smart about it. Keep the ceremony tasteful but inexpensive. Save the real money for us. Emily's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. We'll grieve on cue. We'll post the right photos. People will mourn. Then we process the estate. Quiet, efficient. We'll move, start over. Footsteps approached. Slower, steady. I felt my heart stumble. Nurse Brenda's shoes clicked down the corridor. She was the kind woman who had a warm smile and always made time for one more question. Mrs. Sterling? She said as she swung the door open, her voice calm and professional. In about 15 minutes, we'll take you to the OR. How are you feeling? Emily and Daniel stepped into the room as if summoned by a stage director. Their faces shifted like masks. Their eyes glassed over with practiced concern, shoulders sagging with feigned exhaustion. Emily leaned over me and brushed my forehead with a wet tissue, blinking dramatic tears I now knew were counterfeit. Mom, you heard us? She said, voice breaking on cue. We were just so worried out there. I forced my lips into a whisper. I heard someone in the hall. My voice trembled, but I kept it steady enough to be believable. Daniel reached for my hand, his grip cool and rehearsed. We'll be right here when you wake up, he promised, the words oiled with false tenderness. Don't worry about anything. We've taken care of everything. Brenda checked my ID bracelet, smoothed the blanket, and began the familiar pre-op routine, vital signs, paperwork, the gentle questions surgeons always ask before a patient goes under. The normalcy of it, protocol after protocol, felt like a cruel charade, an orderly procession toward whatever they had decided should happen. Are you ready, Mrs. Sterling? Brenda asked, voice steady, hands professional. I breathed in the antiseptic-scented air and looked at my daughter's face, pale and composed, at Daniel's neat tie, at the practiced sorrow in their eyes. For a moment, everything hung suspended, my life balanced on the scale of their avarice. Then, very quietly, a thought like a kindly blade settled in my mind. I had raised a family, but I had also learned how to survive. The operating room was coming, and so was a reckoning, one way or another. Yes, I lied, the word small and brittle in my throat, while inside I screamed that I wasn't ready to die, that the idea of my life ending in such a treacherous way was unbearable. But beneath the fear, something hard and urgent began to take shape. A plan, thin and desperate, but better than surrender. As Brenda guided my gurney down the corridor, my mind raced. Every second mattered. If Emily and Daniel suspected I'd overheard them, they might speed up their scheme or find another way to silence me. I had to be careful, or I'd hand them exactly what they wanted. Brenda, I whispered when we were far enough from the doorway for my voice not to carry. I need a favor, please, it's an emergency. Her head tilted with genuine concern. What is it, Mrs. Sterling? Are you feeling faint? Should I call the doctor? No. I gripped her hand and forced my voice into steadiness. I need to make a quick phone call before I go to the OR. It's urgent. Life or death. Brenda hesitated. The corridor lights hummed above us. The distant beeping of monitors threaded through the air. "Ma'am, we're almost there. Dr. Evans is waiting. I can't delay surgery long. 2 minutes," I begged. "That's all I ask." "I promise. Then you can take me right in." She stopped the gurney. Her eyes searched mine, reading the panic and something else. Sincerity. "Is this about your will?" she asked. "Yes. I just remembered there's a problem with my documents. If something happens during surgery, it could create legal trouble. I need to call my lawyer, please." Brenda's professional face softened. "All right. Quick call. I'll take you to the small consultation room. I'll tell Dr. Evans we need 5 more minutes." Hope hammered through me, stronger than the dread. In the little side room, with a desk, chair, and a wall phone, Brenda helped me into the chair and handed me the receiver. Tears leaked down my cheeks, hot and immediate. "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't know what this means." My fingers shook as I dialed Arthur Vance's number. Arthur, the attorney who'd handled our affairs since Robert died. The line rang, each tone a small eternity. I pictured Arthur's calm face, the folders on his desk, the quiet authority he carried. Finally, a familiar voice answered. "Arthur Vance, how may I help you?" "Arthur, it's Catherine Sterling," I said, forcing each syllable through a voice that still quavered. "I'm at St. Joseph's and I need your help." "This is urgent." There was a click of attention on his end. "Catherine? What's happened? Are you all right?" "No," the words tumbled. "I overheard Emily and Daniel in the hall. They're planning to take everything. They have a forged will and people to help them. They're talking about bribing staff, about causing a complication after surgery. I think they're going to kill me." Silence met my confession. For a moment I thought the line had dropped. "Catherine, are you sure?" Arthur's voice was tight with disbelief. "Completely." I swallowed. "They mentioned Mark on the night shift, morphine and a notary. They laughed about moving to Miami with the estate. I'm in a room near the OR. I have maybe 2 minutes before they come for me." "You must get me out of here," he exhaled sharply. "Stay calm and listen to me. Can you walk? Are you stable enough to move without assistance?" "I'm weak, but yes. I can walk if you get me clothes and a ride. I don't have anything but this gown and my ID bracelet." The words felt naked to say aloud. "Good," Arthur said, already shifting into action. "I'll send my assistant Sarah to the hospital right now with clothes and photo ID. Don't go into the operating room under any circumstances. If anyone insists, tell them there's a legal hold on your case and you need to speak to your attorney. Tell them Arthur Vance ordered the delay. Do you understand?" "Yes." Relief and terror mingled like rain and thunder. "Please hurry! I'm on my way," he promised. "And Catherine, be careful. Keep Brenda with you. Don't be alone." Brenda stood by the door, hands clasped, eyes steady. I mouthed a thank you and felt something fierce settle inside me. The old survival instinct, the same grit that had let me build an empire from the ashes of loss. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. "Yes," I whispered to Arthur, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I'll make an excuse, but I won't let them operate today." "What if they realize you know the truth?" Arthur's voice carried urgency, but also calm. "Listen carefully. Patients often get nervous before major surgery. Use that, say you need more time. Say you're anxious. It'll sound believable. Stay calm, act normal, and don't give them any reason to suspect you. I'm working on getting help to you, Catherine. 30 minutes. Sarah will be there with a plan. If anything feels unsafe before then, raise your voice. Make a scene if you must. Better to be labeled difficult than to let them silence you." Tears burned my eyes. "Arthur, thank you. You're the only one I can trust." Before I could say more, footsteps echoed in the hallway. I quickly set the receiver back down, forcing myself to breathe evenly. The door creaked open, and Brenda stepped inside, her professional smile tinged with curiosity. "Mrs. Sterling," she said gently, "have you finished your call?" "The doctor and the team are waiting in the operating room." I steadied my trembling hands, folding them neatly over my lap. "Brenda," I said, trying to keep my voice calm yet firm. "After speaking with my lawyer, I realized there are urgent legal matters that must be settled before I go under. Would it be possible to postpone the surgery until tomorrow?" Her brow furrowed. "Ma'am, that's very unusual. Dr. Evans is scrubbed in, the surgical team is prepped, and your family is waiting outside." "Are you absolutely sure?" "Not cancel, just postpone," I insisted. "There are important documents that could create serious legal complications if anything happened to me today." "I'd rather have peace of mind before proceeding." Brenda hesitated. Something in my tone must have convinced her because she nodded slowly. "I'll speak with Dr. Evans, but please understand, this will be a major disruption." "Thank you," I said softly. "It means everything to me." She slipped out, leaving me alone with the pounding in my chest. My reprieve was fragile, temporary, and I knew it. If Emily and Daniel sensed even a flicker of doubt, the mask would crack. Moments later, Brenda returned with Dr. Evans. He was tall, in his early 60s, his salt and pepper beard lending him a stern, dignified presence. His gaze was steady, probing. "Mrs. Sterling?" he began, his voice measured. "Brenda tells me you want to postpone your surgery. This is highly irregular. We prepared extensively for today, and with your heart condition, delay carries risks. Why the sudden change of mind?" I folded my hands tightly, hiding my trembling. "Doctor, I feel physically the same as I did earlier, but I've realized there are critical legal issues I must resolve. It would only be for one day. I assure you I'll be ready tomorrow." He studied me for a long moment, as though searching for cracks in my explanation. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Very well. We'll reschedule for tomorrow, same time. But Mrs. Sterling, we cannot afford repeated postponements. Your heart requires this surgery soon." "I understand completely," I said with a practiced smile. "I'll be ready." But inside, I repeated silently, "I'll never be here tomorrow." Dr. Evans departed, and Brenda guided me back down the sterile hallway. Each step felt like walking a tightrope above a bottomless pit. If my voice wavered, if my eyes betrayed the terror inside me, everything could collapse. When we reached my room, I found them waiting. Emily sat by the window, phone in hand, her expression carefully neutral. Daniel paced the floor, his movements sharp, restless. Now I understood the impatience radiating from him. It wasn't worry for me, but the gnawing tension of a scheme they were desperate to see through. Emily looked up, her sharp eyes narrowing. "What happened, Mom?" she asked, her tone too smooth, too controlled. I forced a small smile, though my insides quaked. "Just a change of plan, darling." And in that moment, I knew. The real performance had only just begun. "Why aren't you in the operating room?" Emily asked, her eyes narrowing as soon as Brenda wheeled me back inside. "I asked to delay the surgery until tomorrow," I answered, forcing steadiness into my voice. "I got nervous at the last minute. I just need one more day to be mentally prepared." Daniel stepped closer to the gurney, his face arranged in a mask of sympathy, though I could see the sharp edge of frustration in his eyes. "Catherine, are you sure about this? The doctor said the surgery should be done as soon as possible." "Yes, I'm sure," I said firmly, my throat tight. "It's only one day. I'll feel calmer tomorrow." Every word that left my lips was an act of willpower. I could see Emily glance at Daniel, that fleeting exchange of looks carrying volumes of meaning. I had missed such signals before, blind to what they truly were, but now I saw them clearly. Frustration, worry, An unspoken agreement between two people who had a plan and just realized their timeline had been disturbed. "Well, Mom, if that's your decision," Emily said, rising from her chair and approaching me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We respect it. What matters is that you feel at peace." Her voice was soft, but her body betrayed her. Tensed shoulders, a forced calmness in her movements. She sensed something wasn't right, even if she couldn't put her finger on it. "You know what, Mom?" she added lightly. "Maybe you should rest alone for a bit. Daniel and I will step out for some lunch and come back later this afternoon." My stomach dropped. "No, honey, you don't have to leave. I like the company," I replied quickly, trying to keep the panic from my tone. The last thing I wanted was to be left vulnerable in that room. Nurse Mark could walk in at any moment. Daniel stepped in, his voice calm but firm, the way he always spoke when he wanted control. "Catherine, we insist. You need to rest, and we need some air. It's been a stressful day for everyone." I had no choice but to nod. "All right," I murmured. "But please don't take too long. I don't like being alone here." Emily leaned down and kissed my forehead, her touch light but cold as ice. 2 hours tops, she promised. "Rest well, Mom. Tomorrow will be a very important day." Yes, I thought bitterly. Tomorrow will be important, but not for the reasons they think. After they left, silence filled the room, broken only by the beeping of monitors in the hallway. I lay there staring at the clock, counting the seconds. 20 minutes had passed since my call with Arthur. That meant in 10 more minutes, Sarah would be here. 10 minutes. 10 minutes that felt like an eternity when your life was hanging by a thread. To steady myself, I thought of Arthur. 15 years of loyalty. He had handled Robert's estate after his death, sold the first properties, managed my investments, safeguarded everything that secured Emily's future. If anyone could unravel this nightmare, it was him. Exactly on time, 30 minutes after my desperate call, the door opened quietly. A young woman stepped inside, composed and purposeful. She was in her mid-20s, her brown hair tied neatly in a ponytail, dressed in a fitted gray business suit. She carried a small rolling case and radiated determination. "Mrs. Sterling," she said softly, moving toward me. "I'm Sarah. I work with Mr. Vance. He sent me to get you out of here." Relief surged through me so intensely my eyes burned with tears. "Thank God. Did you bring what I need?" "Everything." She set the suitcase on the bed and unzipped it. Inside were jeans, a white blouse, a light jacket, and sneakers, my exact size. Beneath the clothes were cash, identification documents, and car keys. "There's a vehicle waiting for you in the parking lot." Arthur thought of every detail. My hands trembled as I touched the clothes. "What's the plan?" Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Mr. Vance is filing an official complaint with the district attorney as we speak. He already submitted your recorded call as evidence and requested an investigation into Emily, Daniel, and the nurse. But we can't wait here. We need to move now." My throat tightened. "How can we leave without them noticing? If Emily or Daniel comes back early," her lips curved into a confident smile. "I've already handled it. I spoke with hospital administration under the pretense that you requested a transfer to a private clinic for a second opinion. The paperwork is done. When we walk out, no one will question it." For the first time that day, a flicker of real hope filled my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I would live to see another tomorrow. "It's a standard transfer for a second opinion. Completely normal," I murmured, feeling oddly impressed by how quickly Arthur's team had moved. "Good," Sarah said, checking her watch. "You need to change quickly. An orderly will be here in 5 minutes to take you for transfer. Your daughter and Daniel should be gone for at least an hour by our estimate, so we have time." My legs trembled as I climbed out of bed, but this time the shaking came with resolve. For the first time since the morning, I felt like I had a sliver of control. Sarah helped me out of the paper gown and into the clothes Arthur had provided. Jeans that fit like a memory, a soft white blouse, a light jacket, and sneakers that steadied my step. I looked at my reflection in the tiny wall mirror. Ordinary, composed, exactly what I needed to look like. "You look perfect," Sarah said, folding the gown into the suitcase and tucking it away. Like someone leaving after a routine consultation. "Nobody will suspect." She handed me a slim folder. "These are the transfer forms. You're being sent to St. Raphael Clinic for a cardiology second opinion. A Dr. Harris will see you there." "Is that a real appointment?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Absolutely," Sarah replied. Mr. Vance set it up. "They'll do a full consult and document your condition. That will help the legal case later. Everything's legitimate." We heard footsteps in the corridor at that moment. I held my breath. The orderly who arrived was exactly as Sarah had promised. A middle-aged man in a crisp uniform, professional and efficient. "Mrs. Catherine Sterling?" he asked. "I'm here for your transfer to St. Raphael Clinic." "That's me," I said, and felt my pulse thump with a mixture of fear and fierce relief. Sarah settled my suitcase in my lap and helped me into the wheelchair. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Everything's under control." As the orderly wheeled me through the hospital, it felt like an escape. We moved past the reception desk and the waiting area, past the rooms where life hung in fragile balance. Each footstep carried me farther from the trap I'd almost walked into. At the automatic doors, the sunlight hit my face like a benediction. Just hours earlier, I'd believed I was going in for a life-saving surgery. Now I understood how close I had come to walking straight into my own end. Sarah pointed to a silver sedan waiting by the curb. "The keys are in my purse," she said. "Can you manage a short walk?" "Yes," I answered and rose from the wheelchair with more energy than I'd had all morning. I climbed into the passenger seat and buckled in, feeling oddly like a woman stepping into a second life. Sarah slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and exhaled. For the first time since I'd overheard them, I let out a long, shaky breath. "Where are we headed first?" I asked as she started the engine. "St. Raphael Clinic for your consultation," she said. "Then to a secure location while Arthur presses charges. Your daughter and Daniel will be surprised when they return and find you gone." We threaded through the city. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see their car appear, imagining Daniel's impatient face. My hands trembled, but the feeling was now a mix of adrenaline and cautious hope. Sarah noticed and offered a steadying smile. "Relax, Mrs. Sterling. Right now they think you're resting in your room. They won't discover anything until they come back." As the hospital receded behind us, I felt something fundamental shift. The place where I had nearly been betrayed was shrinking in the distance, and with it, the idea that I was helpless. The garden of my memories, the Sunday dinners, the stories and the cookies, all of it had nearly been erased by greed. But I had been given a chance to protect what mattered. Sarah kept glancing at her phone, confirming routes, and once more reassured me. "Arthur has filed a complaint with the district attorney. He submitted the recording as evidence. We're doing everything by the book, so when this is over, your grandchildren will know the truth." I folded my hands over my knees and let the engine's hum soothe me. The city unfolded, streets, lights, people, and with each passing block I felt farther from danger and closer to a reckoning that would, at last, honor the life I had built. "And what happens when they figure out I'm gone? Won't they try to track me down?" Sarah's tone carried steady reassurance. "Of course they'll try, but by the time they realize, you'll be in a protected space. Witnesses, medical records, and a full evaluation will prove you are of sound mind and perfectly capable of making your own decisions. They won't have any ground to stand on. The drive to the St. Raphael Clinic felt like slipping into another world. Nestled in a quiet, well-kept district, the building rose out of manicured gardens with sleek glass and clean lines that radiated safety and dignity. It was the opposite of the cold, sterile hospital I had just left. Smaller, warmer, designed to treat people, not just patients. Dr. Harris greeted me personally. He looked to be in his early 60s, his gray-streaked hair neatly combed, his handshake steady. His office was lined with framed diplomas, a wall of books, and photographs of grandchildren scattered among leafy plants. The space felt lived in, genuine, not like the intimidating chambers of specialists I had known before. "Mrs. Sterling," he said after running me through a thorough examination, "your results are remarkable for your age. Stable blood pressure, strong heart rhythm, sharp mental clarity. You are alert, oriented, and fully capable of managing your affairs." I leaned forward. "So I don't need emergency surgery?" He folded his hands thoughtfully. "You do have a heart condition that will need surgery eventually, but there is no immediate danger. We could wait several weeks, months even, and schedule everything properly. There was absolutely no reason to rush you into an operation today." His words landed like a hymn of freedom. Relief surged through me, hot tears stinging my eyes. Emily and Daniel hadn't rushed the procedure for my sake. It had been for theirs. To neatly disguise a death that looked accidental. "Doctor," I pressed, voice trembling, "if someone gave me too much morphine after surgery, what would have happened?" His kind face darkened. "An overdose of morphine in recovery can cause severe respiratory failure. It can lead to coma or death." "Why do you ask such a question?" "Because I am convinced that was exactly what someone intended to do to me." He sat back, his jaw tight. "That is no small accusation. If you believe someone meant to harm you, the authorities must be informed immediately." "We already have," Sarah answered. "My client's attorney is handling everything." When the tests were finished, I carried copies of every document in my hands like a shield. Proof. Evidence of my health. Evidence of my awareness. Sarah drove me next to the safe haven Arthur Vance had arranged, a luxury hotel in the heart of the city. The suite exceeded anything I expected. Polished floors, expansive windows that overlooked glittering lights below, and rooms that felt more like a home than a temporary refuge. The living room was wide and inviting, the bedroom serene, the marble bathroom almost palatial. More importantly, there was a private security detail in the building and staff available around the clock. "Mr. Vance will join us in about an hour," Sarah explained, placing my suitcase in the bedroom. "Until then, you can rest or order something to eat." "I'll be here with you." I sank into the living room sofa, exhausted. The weight of betrayal pressed on my chest, heavier than my illness. My daughter, my Emily, my only child, had plotted my death. And Daniel, the man I had welcomed into the family as if he were my own blood, had helped her weigh my life against money. It was a wound deeper than any scalpel could leave. For years I had given without limit, my time, my energy, my devotion, all in the name of love. But it had been one-sided, a performance of loyalty I thought was mutual. Now I could see clearly. What I mistook for family bonds had been nothing more than dependence and greed. The phone on the side table startled me with its shrill ring. I lifted it with hesitation. "Mrs. Sterling," the receptionist said politely, "there is a couple in the lobby asking for you. They claim to be your daughter and son-in-law. Shall we send them up?" My pulse spiked. My answer came sharp and certain. "No, do not let them through. I do not wish to see them. Please inform them I am not staying here." Understood, Mrs. Sterling. Is there anything else? Yes. If they refuse to leave or cause any trouble, call the police immediately. I hung up and found Sarah watching me from the window. Her eyes narrowed as she peered toward the street below. They're here, she murmured, standing right outside. Emily looks furious. Daniel's trying to calm her down, but they're both rattled. I crossed to the window beside her. Seeing them there, searching for me like predators locked out of their prey's cage, filled me with a strange mix of pain and strength. For the first time in decades, I was not their victim. They no longer held the strings. Emily looked shaken, pacing by the curb, while Daniel gripped his phone with a hard expression. My stomach twisted. How did they find me so quickly? I whispered. Sarah's voice stayed calm. They probably called every clinic and hotel in the city, but it doesn't matter. You are here under your own choice. You're competent, sound of mind, and you have every legal right to be wherever you decide. 20 minutes later, the suite's phone rang again. My hand trembled as I picked it up. But this time it was a voice I recognized and trusted. Catherine, it's Arthur. I just got here. Are you safe? Yes, I breathed, almost collapsing with relief. But Emily and Daniel are downstairs asking for me. I saw them when I arrived, Arthur replied. Don't worry. The staff here handled it. They've been told they cannot disturb you, and they're leaving now. 5 minutes later, there was a firm knock at the door. Sarah checked first, then opened it. Arthur Vance stepped inside, tall and commanding in a charcoal suit, his silver hair perfectly combed back. His presence was like a protective wall. He crossed the room quickly and took me into an embrace that felt both professional and deeply human. Catherine, he said warmly, I can't tell you how relieved I am to see you standing here. When you called me this morning, I had trouble believing what I was hearing. I blinked away tears. Arthur, you saved my life today. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said firmly, sitting down across from me and opening a thick folder from his briefcase. This day isn't over. Now comes the hard part, making sure Emily and Daniel are held accountable. I straightened, bracing myself. I'm listening. First, I filed a criminal complaint this morning with the district attorney's office. Conspiracy to commit murder. We've got the recording of our phone call as preliminary evidence. Second, I've already requested a financial investigation. If Emily and Daniel have been siphoning money from you over the years, we'll find it. The thought made me sick. Do you think they've been stealing from me all this time? It's very likely, Arthur said without hesitation. People don't wake up one morning and plan a murder. This kind of scheme is built over years. He turned another page. Third, I've contacted St. Joseph's Hospital to look into that nurse. If he took money to tamper with your care, we'll uncover it. I clenched my hands together, my late husband Robert's memory flashing in my mind. He had trusted Emily, adored her. If he were alive to see this, the betrayal would have broken him. And the will? I asked softly. They mentioned forging one. Arthur nodded gravely. Tomorrow we'll go to my office and review your current will. We'll put protections in place to make it impossible for anyone to tamper with it. We'll secure every document. He kept explaining, but my thoughts shifted to something more tender. Arthur, I interrupted. What about my grandchildren? They're innocent in all of this. I can't let them suffer for their parents' greed. Arthur leaned forward, his expression softening. That shows your heart, Catherine. And yes, there's a way. We'll set up a trust for them. Their education, health, and well-being will be cared for under the management of a neutral trustee. Emily and Daniel won't have a single dollar of access. The idea brought me immediate relief. My grandchildren didn't deserve to be punished for their parents' cruelty. They were still part of Robert's legacy, and mine. Arthur's tone shifted again, growing more serious. But I need you to understand something. Tonight, Emily and Daniel are going to realize their plan has collapsed. They expected millions, and now they have nothing. Desperation makes people dangerous. Starting tomorrow, you'll have private security around you at all times. Arthur, is that really necessary? He met my eyes without flinching. Absolutely. You cost them a fortune by surviving today. We don't know what they'll try next. At that moment, the phone rang again. The receptionist's voice carried a new weight. Mrs. Sterling, the couple from earlier has returned. This time they've brought 2 children with them. They say the children are your grandchildren, and they're asking to come up to see you. The air left my lungs in one sharp exhale. Emily had brought my grandchildren, my sweet, innocent grandchildren, as bargaining chips. The realization was like a blade slicing through my chest. Arthur's face was grave but steady. "Catherine," he said quietly, "this is emotional blackmail. She's trying to break your resolve." Tears filled my eyes. I could almost hear Robert's voice in my head, telling me to stay strong. Emily's cruelty had no bottom, and now she was using the very children I loved most as pawns. "Catherine, this is exactly what we prepared for," Arthur said gently but firmly. "They're going to pull every emotional string they can to weaken you. What do you want to do?" My fingers shook as I clutched the receiver. I didn't need to see them to picture the scene below. Little Leo, just 5, probably clutching his superhero toy. Sweet Sophia, 7, wearing something bright and delicate, her curls bouncing as she looked around in confusion. Emily no doubt had told them I was sick, that Grandma needed them. And Daniel, he'd be feeding them whatever story served his purpose. "Tell them to send the children up," I finally said to the receptionist, my throat tight. "Only the children. Emily and Daniel must stay in the lobby." "Catherine," Arthur's voice was sharp, "that's risky. They could be using the children as a way to corner you." "They're innocent," I whispered, my chest aching. "I can't turn my grandchildren away without reason. But their parents are not coming up here. Not under any circumstances." I repeated my instructions to the front desk. If they refuse, then no one comes up. And if they cause a disturbance, call the police. 5 minutes later, a soft knock echoed at the door. When I opened it, there they were, my angels. Sophia ran to me in her pink dress, the one I had given her for her last birthday, while Leo clung shyly to her hand in his favorite superhero shirt. "Grandma," Sophia cried, flinging her arms around me. "Mommy said you were sick in the hospital, but then they said you left and we didn't know where you were." Leo's eyes were wide and uncertain. "Why didn't you come home?" Mommy and Daddy were really mad in the car. They said bad words. My knees nearly buckled as I pulled them both close, tears spilling freely down my face. These 2 were my treasures, the only pure, untouched part of my family. They didn't know that their parents had set a trap to end my life. "My darlings," I said, leading them to the sofa, holding them as if I could shield them from the world. "Grandma is fine. I had to make some changes at the hospital, so I'll be staying here at the hotel for a little while." "Why not at your house?" Sophia asked, her curiosity so honest it pierced me. Arthur stepped forward from where he'd been quietly watching. His voice was warm, almost playful. "Hello there. I'm Arthur, your grandmother's lawyer. She's here because she has important things to sort out." "It's nothing for you to worry about." Leo squinted at him. "Are you a good guy?" "Mommy says some lawyers are bad." Arthur chuckled, leaning down slightly. "Well, I can promise you I'm one of the good ones. My job is to protect your grandmother and make sure nothing bad happens to her." For 20 minutes, I tried to forget the storm raging around us. I listened to Sophia chatter about her teacher and the class pet turtle. Leo proudly showed me a sticker he'd gotten for finishing his reading assignment. We laughed, we hugged, and I asked about their friends, their games, their little triumphs. But beneath it all, my mind raced, already plotting how to protect them from the toxic world their parents were creating. Then came the question I dreaded. "Grandma," Sophia said softly, "why couldn't Mommy and Daddy come up? They're downstairs, and Mommy was crying." The knife twisted deeper. How could I explain to a child that her mother's tears weren't love but manipulation? That the woman she trusted most had schemed to take my life? I stroked her hair gently. "Sometimes, sweetheart, adults have difficult things to talk about that children don't need to hear. But Mommy and Daddy know you're safe, and the only thing you need to remember is that Grandma loves you more than anything in this world." Leo looked up at me with those wide brown eyes. "Are you coming over Sunday? For pancakes like always?" My breath caught. Sunday mornings had been the heartbeat of my week. Robert's tradition carried on, the smell of syrup and laughter filling my kitchen. But now, I realized every breakfast had been part of a cruel illusion. "I don't know, my love," I whispered, swallowing the ache in my throat. "Things might be different for a little while. But I promise you this, no matter what, you will always be able to see me. That will never change." Arthur glanced at his watch, then gave me a discreet nod. Time was running out. Emily and Daniel were no doubt seething in the lobby. "Waiting, scheming. My angels," I said, pulling Leo and Sophia close one last time. "It's time for you to go back to Mommy and Daddy. But I want you to remember something very important." I kissed their cheeks, holding them tighter than ever. "No matter what happens, your grandmother loves you more than life itself. Always. Don't ever forget that." As they wrapped their small arms around my neck, I inhaled their scent, the innocence of childhood, the only true purity left in my family. I held on to that moment like it was oxygen, knowing the war outside these walls had only just begun. I didn't know when I'd see them again, or under what circumstances. Sophia pressed her cheek to mine and whispered, "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my princess," I murmured into her hair, then held little Leo tighter and told him the same. After the children left, I stood at the window and watched Emily, Daniel, and the two little figures file into their car. From the 10th floor, they looked small and frantic. I could see Daniel slam the door with a violence that made my hands clench. Arthur came up behind me, his presence steady. "That was brave," he said softly. "Very brave." "Arthur, can I still see them, my grandchildren, without having any contact with Emily and Daniel?" I asked. The question burned. My whole life had narrowed to those two small faces. "It's complicated," he answered, turning to the view, "but not impossible. As a grandparent, you can petition for visitation rights. If you can convince the court, it's in the children's best interest. It will be a long fight, but we'll have strong grounds, especially once we document everything." "I don't care how long it takes," I said. "Those children are the only pure part of my life. I won't let their parents take them from me too." The phone on the side table rang, and when the receptionist's voice came through, it had a new urgency. "Mrs. Sterling, this is the head of hotel security. We have a situation. The couple who came earlier has returned with reporters and television cameras. They're claiming you've been kidnapped and demanding to see you." Arthur and I exchanged alarmed looks. "Reporters?" I repeated, unable to hide the disbelief. "Yes, ma'am, 2 news vans have just pulled up. They're giving interviews, and they're saying you vanished from the hospital mysteriously." Arthur took the handset immediately, his tone switching into the kind of controlled authority that had always comforted me in legal storms. "This is Arthur Vance, Mrs. Sterling's attorney. She is here of her own free will, fully competent, and is not being held against her will under any circumstances." "I understand, Mr. Vance," the receptionist said, voice tight. "But the reporters are demanding a statement from Mrs. Sterling herself." Arthur glanced at me. I felt the weight of decision settle like a stone. If I stepped into the lobby to speak, I would make my accusations public. There would be no going back. But Emily and Daniel had already chosen the spotlight when they tried to make this a spectacle. "Do it," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Tell them I will speak in an hour. I'll hold a press conference in the lobby and set the record straight." Arthur's face flickered with concern. "Are you sure? Once this is public, there's no turning back." "They brought cameras to corner me," I replied. "If they want a theater, we'll give them the truth on a stage of our own. This time, I intend to win." For the first time that day, I felt something like steel in my bones. I had been small and frightened that morning. Now I felt like the woman who had built a real estate empire with her own two hands. I would not be cowed. Arthur opened his briefcase and began to lay out a plan. "We'll need every detail," he said. "Every word you overheard, every name, every dollar figure. We'll organize the evidence, prepare your statement, and ensure we present this cleanly. No theatrics, only facts." Over the next 40 minutes, we combed through the morning's horror. I repeated the hallway conversation word by word while Arthur transcribed it, pausing me when he needed clarity, asking the names of anyone mentioned, making a list of witnesses. We cataloged the phone recording, the timeline of my call, the nurse names, and the forged documents I feared. He instructed Sarah to gather every medical report and the St. Raphael consultation notes. We rehearsed how I would hold the microphone, where I would stand, and the concise truth I would deliver. "Stay calm," Arthur advised as we descended in the elevator. "Speak clearly. Tell only the truth. The truth is your best defense." When the doors opened into the lobby, I felt as if I'd stepped into a different world. Cameras swiveled toward me, reporters leaned forward with notepads, and the bright lights made everyone's faces seem too sharp. In the front row, Emily and Daniel sat like statues, shock and panic making their expressions raw and exposed. They had finally discovered I wasn't the helpless target they expected. I walked forward with Arthur by my side, each step steady. The air was electric. Flashes popped like distant thunder. It was time to unmask what they had tried to hide, and to show everyone who had tried to bargain with my life that I was not merely a source of inheritance. I was a person, and I would fight. There were more reporters than I had imagined, at least a dozen with microphones extended like spears, 3 television cameras rolling, and photographers firing flashes so fast the air seemed to crackle with light. The hotel manager had set up a makeshift podium by the reception desk. Rows of chairs lined up as though a head of state was about to speak. The moment the elevator doors slid open and I stepped out, the murmur of chatter dissolved into silence, every eye in the lobby fixed on me. A 72-year-old woman, dressed not in power suits or jewels, but in simple jeans and a white blouse, walking with steady determination toward the podium. Beside me, Arthur moved like a shield, his calm authority radiating assurance. But it wasn't the reporter's stares that pierced me most. It was the sight of Emily and Daniel in the front row. My daughter's face was drained of color, her hands trembling so badly she gripped her purse to steady them. Daniel sat rigid, jaw clenched so tight it looked as though he might shatter his teeth. Panic flickered across his eyes, and for the first time I realized the power had shifted. They had wanted to control the story, to cast themselves as loving relatives searching for a missing mother. They had never imagined I would confront them on their stage. I stepped behind the podium and adjusted the microphone. The feedback echoed through the room, sharpening the silence until it became almost unbearable. I let the pause linger, scanning the crowd, making them wait. Then, with a steady breath, I began. "Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Sterling. I am 72 years old. I am of sound mind, and I stand before you of my own free will to address a matter of grave importance concerning my family." The cameras zoomed closer. Reporters lifted their pens and recorders, their eyes hungry. Emily and Daniel exchanged a frantic glance, as if begging each other to stay calm. "This morning," I continued, "I was admitted to St. Joseph's Hospital for a scheduled heart procedure. 30 minutes before the operation, I overheard a conversation between my daughter, Emily Sterling, and her husband, Daniel Harris. One that changed my life forever." A ripple ran through the crowd. The press leaned forward, sensing the eruption about to come. They discussed without hesitation how they stood to benefit from my death. They spoke of a forged will, a falsified signature, and even a nurse bribed with $5,000 to ensure I never made it out of recovery alive. They calculated exactly how to divide my estate, an estate worth more than $2 million, before I had even been wheeled into the operating room. The lobby erupted. Gasps, exclamations, frantic whispers. Flashes burst like fireworks. Some reporters were already speaking into phones, no doubt racing to get the story onto the evening news. "That's a lie," Daniel roared, springing to his feet. "This woman is senile. She doesn't know what she's saying." Arthur stepped in immediately, his voice cutting like steel. "Mr. Harris, I strongly suggest you remain silent. Anything you say from this moment forward can and will be admissible in the legal proceedings already underway." Emily also rose, her face streaked with tears that sparkled under the camera lights. "Mother, how could you say such things?" she cried, her voice trembling with rehearsed heartbreak. "We love you. We've been frantic, searching everywhere. We thought someone had taken you." Her performance was flawless, so flawless that for a fleeting second I felt a pang of doubt. But then I remembered every venomous word I had overheard at the hospital, every detail of their cold calculations. "Emily," I said, meeting her eyes across the room, my voice steady as stone, "tell these reporters the name of the nurse Daniel bribed." "Say her name aloud." She froze. The color drained completely from her cheeks. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "Tell us the notary who was prepared to process the forged will," I pressed, each question hammering the truth harder into the silence. "Nothing." "Then tell us. Emily, how much did you and Daniel say my downtown properties were worth? Repeat the number." "You know it." Daniel grabbed Emily's arm and tried to drag her toward the exit. "We don't have to listen to this madness." "Come on, Emily." But they didn't get far. The reporters surged forward, microphones blocking their path, cameras flashing in their faces. "Mr. Harris, is it true you plotted to kill your mother-in-law?" one shouted. "Mrs. Sterling, can you confirm or deny the bribery accusations?" Another pressed. "What about the children, Emily? Were you using them to manipulate your mother?" A third called out. The barrage of questions hit them from all sides. Their masks cracked, their polished act shattered. Daniel's face twisted with fury. Emily's tears no longer looked convincing but desperate. The panic on their faces was raw, unfiltered, and unmistakable. And as I stood at the podium, watching them unravel under the weight of their own lies, I knew the truth had finally begun its work. I stepped back toward the microphone, my heartbeat steady now, my voice sharpened with purpose. I want everyone listening to understand something very clearly. This is not about anger or revenge. I am speaking today because I am fighting for my life. Just hours ago, I narrowly escaped what would have been my own execution. A reporter near the back raised his voice above the clicking of cameras. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have any tangible evidence of these claims?" Arthur moved beside me, his tone clipped and authoritative. "Yes, we do. We have a recording of the phone call Mrs. Sterling made to me directly from the hospital, recounting in real time what she overheard. We also have medical records proving her surgery was elective and could have been safely postponed, contrary to what her family told her. And finally, the district attorney's office has already opened an active investigation into the financial records of both Emily Sterling and Daniel Harris, as well as the hospital staff mentioned in the allegations. Another reporter quickly followed. Has the nurse Mark been taken into custody? That is part of the district attorney's ongoing investigation, Arthur replied smoothly. The room buzzed with excitement until Emily suddenly broke down, collapsing into sobs. Mother, please stop this. The children are watching us on television. Think of your grandchildren. Her words, designed to soften me, instead ignited a fire inside. I straightened, my tone ice cold. Now you bring up the children, Emily? Where was that concern this morning, when you were calmly planning to leave them without a grandmother, so you could buy a house in Miami? Her head snapped up. The precision of the detail hit her like a slap across the face. She had spoken of Miami in that hushed conversation at the hospital, a detail I could not have conjured from nowhere. We never mentioned Miami, Daniel muttered. But his protest was so weak, so unconvincing, that even he seemed to know it was useless, didn't you? I asked, pulling a small notebook from my purse. I flipped it open for the cameras to see, because I wrote down every word. You also said $2 million would let you travel across Europe, buy designer wardrobes, and dine at the finest restaurants. Should I continue reading from these notes? Both their faces drained of color. In that instant, the pretense was shattered. They knew I hadn't just overheard them. I had preserved their betrayal in black and white. A television reporter seized the moment. Mrs. Sterling, after all this, what happens now with your daughter and son-in-law? It was the question I had been waiting for. I leaned into the microphone, letting my words fall like hammer blows. My relationship with Emily Sterling and Daniel Harris is over, forever. When someone plots your death for money, there is no forgiveness. There is no reconciliation. Trust that has been destroyed in such a way can never be rebuilt. And what about your grandchildren? Another voice asked. My grandchildren are blameless in all of this. They are innocent. I will fight with every legal option available to ensure I remain in their lives. Their futures will be protected by trust funds placed under independent management. Funds that Emily and Daniel will never be able to touch. Emily let out a strangled cry. The realization struck her harder than anything I had said yet. Not only had they lost the inheritance, but I was actively ensuring they would never profit from me again. You can't do that, she screamed, desperation raw in her voice. We are your family. I met her eyes, unflinching. Family does not plot your death. Family does not calculate your worth in dollars. Family does not bribe hospital staff to poison you. You ceased to be my family the moment you decided I was more valuable to you dead than alive. The reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing, every second captured for the world to see. I could feel the weight of the moment. This was not just my story anymore. It was becoming something bigger. One more thing, I added, steadying myself as I leaned closer to the microphone. To every older American watching this, guard your independence. Protect your wills, your property, your savings. Do not hand over blind trust, not even to your own blood. Keep your legal documents in the hands of a trusted lawyer who answers only to you. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you are powerless. Arthur gave me the slightest nod of approval. It was exactly the message we wanted out in the open. A final question came from the front. Mrs. Sterling, will you be pursuing legal action? Arthur answered firmly before I could. The legal process has already begun. Charges of conspiracy to commit murder have been filed. We are also investigating potential financial crimes that may have been ongoing for years. The reporters erupted again, hungry for more, but I stepped back from the podium. The damage to Emily and Daniel was complete. Their masks were gone, their reputations gutted before a room full of cameras. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Daniel finally shoved his way through the swarm of cameras and microphones, pulling Emily by the wrist toward the exit. But before stepping out, he spun around, his face twisted with rage, and spat venom across the room. "This isn't over, you delusional old woman. We'll take everything you've got." The words exploded in the lobby, caught by every microphone, burned into every live broadcast. That moment was the nail in his coffin. No one watching could mistake his intentions now. He had threatened me publicly, stripping away the last mask of respectability he clung to. As the doors slammed shut behind them, reporters and cameramen rushed after, shouting questions into the air. I stood frozen behind the podium, hands resting firmly on the wood. Inside me surged a strange storm, half victory, half grief. I had survived, I had spoken the truth, but in doing so, I had buried whatever remained of my family. The daughter I once cradled in my arms had chosen betrayal, and the man she married had dragged her down with him. But at least I was still alive. Alive to fight, alive to protect what mattered most. The next 48 hours unfolded like nothing I had ever known. My story spread like wildfire, splashed across every network, dissected on talk shows, and shared millions of times online. My name, Catherine Sterling, became a headline. Phones rang off the hook. Journalists begged for interviews. Television producers dangled offers, and even publishers reached out about turning my ordeal into a book. I was overwhelmed, not by fame, but by the realization that so many others saw in me a reflection of their own fears. The fear of betrayal within one's own blood. Arthur had anticipated the risk. Within hours, 2 bodyguards were stationed at my side, working in shifts so I was never alone. This was not paranoia. After Daniel's public threat, protection was essential. A man who once plotted to poison me would not hesitate to try again when his carefully constructed lies collapsed in front of the entire nation. That morning, as we shared a quiet breakfast in the hotel suite, Arthur set down his coffee cup with deliberate calm. "Catherine," he said, his voice carrying both gravity and resolve, "I have significant updates on the investigation." I braced myself. "Tell me." "First," he said, leaning closer, "the authorities arrested Mark, the nurse. Once they confronted him with the footage of the press conference and explained that Daniel had already dragged his name into the light, he broke completely. He admitted everything. The $5,000 bribe, the plan with the morphine, the whispered phone calls with Daniel over the last month. It's all documented." A chill slid down my spine. I felt vindicated but sickened. The scheme had been real. Every detail I overheard, every word I scribbled in my notebook, it hadn't been paranoia. "It had been my noose, and I had narrowly escaped it," Arthur continued, his tone steady but edged with quiet fury. "There's more. We've uncovered evidence that Emily and Daniel have been stealing from you for years. It started small but grew bolder over time. Altogether, we estimate around $300,000 siphoned from your accounts." I shook my head slowly, the number rattling inside my skull. 300,000? How? How did I not see it? "They were careful," Arthur explained. "The transfers looked legitimate. Payments for renovations that never happened, premiums for fake insurance, even phony investments. Daniel's background in accounting made it easy for him to cover their tracks. You trusted them, and they exploited that trust. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not only had they plotted my death, but for 3 years they had been quietly robbing me blind, one fabricated expense at a time. It was systematic, patient, deliberate. I steadied myself. And the notary Daniel claimed was willing to forge my will? Arthur's lips curved into a thin smile. That was a bluff. We checked every angle, and there is no such notary. We believe he invented the detail to make Emily believe the plan was airtight. He probably assumed he could bribe someone after your death, but at the time of the conspiracy, he had nothing. I sat back, exhaling slowly. So it wasn't as clever a plan as I thought. Exactly, Arthur said. This wasn't the work of masterminds. It was desperation. Two people blinded by greed, cutting corners, thinking they were untouchable. That makes them reckless but also sloppy. Which means they've left a trail. Before I could respond, my cell phone rang. The number flashed across the screen, one I hadn't seen in far too long. My breath caught. David, I whispered as I answered. The familiar voice of my younger brother came through, full of urgency and love. Catherine, I just saw the news. I can't believe it. Are you safe? Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, David, I'm safe. Shaken, betrayed, but alive. And hearing your voice feels like the first piece of comfort I've had in days. I'm coming, he said firmly. You shouldn't face this alone. I'll be on the next flight. Don't worry, I'm protected here. Arthur and his team have been extraordinary, but I would love to see you. Then I'll be there tonight, he promised. As I hung up, a wave of realization swept over me. For so long, I had poured everything into Emily and Daniel, giving them my time, my wealth, my blind devotion. In doing so, I had let other bonds fray, bonds that were honest, bonds that mattered. David had never once asked me for money. He had never envied what I built. He only wanted a sister, and now, as my world fractured, I saw with perfect clarity. I had lost one family, but perhaps I had a chance to rebuild another. Maybe it was time, I thought, to stop clinging to people who only saw me as a bank account and start cherishing the ones who had always loved me without conditions. That quiet revelation filled me with an unfamiliar sense of peace. But before the thought could settle, Arthur's voice broke in. Catherine, there's something you need to hear. Emily and Daniel have retained a defense attorney. They're preparing their strategy. My stomach nodded. What kind of strategy? Arthur's eyes hardened. They're going to claim you suffer from senile dementia. According to them, this whole story is a fabrication, your imagination running wild, and they'll say I've manipulated you into rewriting your estate in my favor. The audacity of it left me stunned. How could they possibly argue that? I've had medical evaluations proving I'm perfectly lucid. They'll insist those tests are unreliable, Arthur explained. They'll argue they were conducted after I supposedly got into your head. They'll line up witnesses, neighbors, housekeepers, anyone willing to say you've seemed confused or forgetful. Some will be convinced, others will be paid. Either way, they'll try to muddy the waters. A cold wave rolled through me. The press conference had been my first victory, but this was only the opening skirmish. They had already stolen $300,000, and the prospect of millions more was enough for them to claw and deceive without shame. What can we do? I asked, steadying my voice. Arthur leaned forward. We build a wall of evidence. Every conversation is recorded, every meeting photographed, every interaction documented. We'll gather testimony from those who know you best, people who will swear under oath that your mind is as sharp as ever. And most importantly, you must continue to live openly and normally. Show the world that you are in control of yourself and your life. That afternoon, as Arthur buried himself in drafting the next set of legal filings, I sat by the window of the suite, gazing out at the city. A thought kept returning. For the first time in years, I was free. Free from those suffocating dinners where Daniel belittled me with smug financial advice. Free from Emily's practiced smiles that masked her resentment. Free from pretending I didn't notice the condescension, the entitlement, the invisible chains of obligation. The phone rang again. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen. I hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Sterling?" A young woman's voice, earnest and bright, came through. "My name is Valerie. I'm an investigative journalist. I've been following your case, and I'd like to propose something." My guard went up. "What kind of proposal?" "We'd like to produce a documentary, not only about your attempted murder, but about the broader issue: financial exploitation of the elderly. Your story could shine a light on what so many people suffer in silence. We believe it could help thousands." The idea caught me off guard, but quickly grew inside me like a spark fanned into flame. If my suffering could protect others, if my survival could give courage to someone else, then maybe all of this pain would not have been in vain. "I'm interested," I said carefully, "but I'll need to speak with my lawyer first." "Of course. And please know, you would have full editorial control. This is not about exploiting your tragedy. It's about giving you a platform to empower others." After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. Just 3 days earlier, I had been a trusting, naive woman, blind to the dangers in my own home. Now I was something else entirely: a survivor, an advocate in the making, a woman reclaiming the story of her own life. That night, David arrived. The moment I saw my brother step through the door, I felt a weight lift from my chest. For the first time in 72 hours, I could breathe. He embraced me without hesitation, without expectation. No hidden agenda, only love. Over dinner, his words cut through years of silence. "Catherine, I always sensed something off about Daniel. Too charming, too involved in your business. But I never thought it would come to this." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked softly. "Because after Robert died, you seemed content with them. I worried you'd think I was jealous of your new family. I didn't want to risk losing you." It was a painful truth, but an important one. Those who truly care for us sometimes stay quiet, fearing to hurt us, while those who seek to destroy us never stop whispering sweet lies. That night, for the first time since the hospital, I slept deeply, without fear. Tomorrow would begin a new phase, and I was ready. 6 months later, I sat in my new office, sunlight streaming across a stack of legal papers. Arthur called to confirm what we had long expected. Emily and Daniel had been sentenced to 8 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. The nurse, Mark, received 5 years for attempted murder. Justice, at last, had been delivered. But more than that, I had delivered myself from the grip of betrayal, from the illusion of family built on greed, from silence. I was Catherine Sterling, and I had survived. The documentary Valerie created about my ordeal turned into a national sensation. Titled "The Grandmother Who Refused to Be Silenced," it reached more than 5 million viewers within months and sparked legislative reform in 3 states, strengthening protections for seniors against financial and emotional abuse. My mailbox and inbox overflowed. Over 10,000 letters arrived from people sharing their own painful experiences, many of them saying they found the courage to protect themselves because of my story. My brother David kept his promise. He moved closer to me, and in the process we restored the bond we had both quietly missed for years. I discovered that life becomes infinitely richer when you choose to surround yourself with people who genuinely care, not those who only see you as a means to an end. The most delicate part of my new life has been my grandchildren. After months of exhausting court hearings, I was granted supervised visitation rights. Every other Saturday, I meet Leo and Sophia at a family center, always with a social worker nearby. At first it felt forced, almost clinical, but slowly the barriers began to dissolve. Just last week, Leo, now 6 years old, looked up at me with wide eyes and asked why his parents were in the place where people go when they've done bad things. I explained gently, in words he could understand, that sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and when that happens, they must face consequences and learn to be better. Sophia, always the tender one, reached for my hand and whispered, "But you'll always be our grandma, right?" My heart melted. "Forever and always," I told her. "No matter what happens, nothing will ever change that. I have created educational trust funds for both of them. When they turn 18, they'll have everything they need for college and a foundation to start their adult lives on their own terms, without interference from their parents." Ironically, my health has improved since escaping that nightmare. The stress of living with lies had been eroding me in ways I hadn't even recognized. Now, surrounded by truth and unconditional love, my blood pressure is steady, my sleep is peaceful, and even my heart has grown stronger. Surgery is still on the horizon, but no longer urgent. With the platform my story gave me, I founded the Catherine Sterling Foundation, dedicated to defending seniors from abuse by those closest to them. We work hand in hand with attorneys, social workers, and community leaders to identify and prevent exploitation before it claims another life. It's heartbreaking how widespread the problem is, but also deeply inspiring to know we're making a difference. Arthur has stayed by my side through it all. He's no longer just my attorney, he's one of my dearest friends. "Catherine," he told me not long ago, "you turned the deepest betrayal of your life into your greatest victory." I believe him. Now, at 73, I carry lessons I wish I'd understood decades ago. Blood does not define family, loyalty and love do. Forgiveness is not always owed, especially when someone deliberately plots your destruction. And it is never too late to reclaim your life, to start over, and to write a new ending. Emily has written me letters from prison, begging for forgiveness, insisting it was all Daniel's idea and that she was manipulated. But I know what I heard. I remember her voice in that hospital room, the cold calculations, the thrill in her tone when she spoke about vacations in Miami funded by my death. That is not the voice of a victim. That is the voice of a willing partner in betrayal. Forgiveness, in her case, will never come. Daniel, even behind bars, continues to paint me as a delusional old woman, clinging to his narrative of innocence. But the truth is irrefutable. The nurse's confession, the bank statements exposing years of theft, the recordings of my calls, the witnesses who testified to my clarity of mind. His lies have no soil left to grow in. This morning, as I sifted through new letters addressed to my foundation, one stopped me cold. It was from a 68-year-old woman, her handwriting shaky but her words powerful. She described the unease she felt living with her son and daughter-in-law, both of whom seemed fixated on her estate. She wrote, "Your story saved my life. When I read what happened to you, I realized the signs in my own home weren't just paranoia." Reading those words, I understood something profound. My story had stopped being just my own. It had become a warning, a shield, and, most importantly, a beacon for others. And that, I realized, was the true triumph of my survival. I turned to the law for help and brought in private investigators. What they uncovered confirmed every suspicion. Emily and Daniel had forged documents and were secretly preparing to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could take everything Robert and I built. Discoveries like that remind me why I chose to make my private pain public, why I allowed the world to see the darkest part of my life. Because by exposing it, I not only protected myself, I lit a path for others who might otherwise stay silent. Now, when I return to my new home, smaller than the mansion I once lived in, but infinitely more peaceful, I step into the garden and let the quiet surround me. It is in that stillness that I reflect on the extraordinary journey I've taken. I lost a daughter and a son-in-law, But I gained a circle of people who value me for who I am, not for what I own. I lost the belief that family blood always means unconditional love. But in its place, I found wisdom, strength, and clarity I never imagined I could carry at this age. Most importantly, I am alive. Not simply breathing, but truly alive in spirit in a way I haven't been for decades. The morning I was scheduled for surgery, just 30 minutes before the procedure that could have ended my life, I overheard the plan meant to erase me from this world. But those 30 minutes were not the conclusion they expected. They became the beginning of my rebirth. To anyone hearing this, I offer my truth. Trust your instincts. Secure your legal documents and keep control of your finances. Do not surrender your right to live with dignity, no matter who tries to take it from you. It is never too late to defend yourself. Never too late to write a new chapter. The truth always breaks through lies, and while justice may not come quickly, it always arrives in its time. My name is Catherine Sterling. I am 73 years old. And this is not just the story of what I survived. It is the story of how I chose to live again.